Hi everyone, it's Neil Bennett here from the Worship Foundation. I imagine that the last little while has been bittersweet for many of us. At the same time that we've been unable to gather for those worship experiences that are so important and formational, we found other ways for our faith to flourish, other ways for church to flourish. Who'd have thought that online church could be so effective for so many people? But now we do have permission to gather again, but not permission to sing, or at least to sing in the way that we would normally sing. So we've been asked to give a little thought as to what worship without singing could look like. And this is the first of a few videos we'll be producing. But let me start with a question. Do you and your team and your church have a shared understanding of what worship actually is? Because everyone thinks about it differently, and everyone speaks about it differently. What is your theology of worship? And I think it's an important question to ask, because theology shapes practice, shapes people. And if at this time we're going to focus in on our practice, it's really important that we have good theology. Eugene Peterson says this: worship is the strategy by which we interrupt our preoccupation with ourselves and attend to the presence of God. Worship is the strategy by which we interrupt our preoccupation with ourselves and attend to the presence of God. I love that definition, and I see it rooted in Scripture, and I'm sure I'll return to it often, but for the moment, let's just think of that idea that worship is attending to the presence of God. And of course, singing is one way we can do that. Singing is a great way we can do that. Singing is such a gift to the church, the combination of the melody and the harmony and the rhythm and the lyrics and the voices gathered, joined together in the same room. It's such a gift, and we should never stop being thankful for it. But singing is only one way to attend to the presence of God. And in this time when singing is unavailable to us, it's a great opportunity to consider different ways. Consider ways that we haven't thought of before. Maybe consider ways that have been neglected in the recent history of the church. And so when we do gather together again, maybe the first thing we should do is acknowledge the presence of God amongst us. Because it's going to be so important for our communities to know that the absence of singing does not mean the absence of the presence of God. And so often I think we relate those two things in the wrong way. Sing louder and you'll have more of the presence of God. Sing these particular songs and you'll have more of the presence of God. Or get this worship leader to lead the songs and you'll have more of the presence of God. This is not a biblical way of thinking and speaking about worship. Because when we gather together, God is already amongst us in all of his fullness. Because God dwells in, lives in, inhabits people. And when his people gather, he is there with them in all of his fullness. And our worship revolves around his presence. It orientates itself around his presence, not the other way around. There's a great prayer. It's a liturgy. It's part of the Anglican liturgy. It's a response liturgy that I think is really helpful here and expresses that truth, that our worship orientates around his presence. And it goes like this: the Lord is here. His Spirit is with us. Lift up your hearts. We lift them to the Lord. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. It is right to give him thanks and praise. When we gather, God is with us already in all of his fullness, and our worship orientates itself around his presence. That's a great prayer. You may want to use that when you start gathering together. And if you don't feel comfortable or safe raising your voices together, maybe find other ways of doing it. Lift your hands together, kneel down and bow down together. But it's such a great truth in these times that the absence of singing does not mean the absence of the presence of God. Well, that's our first thought on this series, Worship Without Singing. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, maybe like the video, maybe share the video, put your comments below, put your questions below, and we'll answer them, and maybe use some of those questions in later videos. But for the moment, God bless and see you soon.